I am going to demystify and deconfuculate one of the biggest misconceptions about GMRS. A misconception that incites rage in many new GMRS users, causing much gnashing of teeth and even more whining in the online forums. So just what is this misconception about GMRS? I see people that get it wrong whining in the online forums about it all the time. And the complaint usually goes something to the effect of,
I spent all this money on a new GMRS radio and I can't find anyone to talk to. I can't make any contacts.
So allow me to deconfuculate this so that you don't make the same mistake and look a fool. GMRS is what our overlords at the FCC call a personal radio service. And if you were able to find your way to the FCC website and read the words on the page, you would see that it says, GMRS is available to an individual for short-distance two-way communication to facilitate the activities of licensees and their immediate family members. And what this means is GMRS is for purposeful usage, such as point-to-point communications for members in your group. For example, if you're off-roading, you would use GMRS to communicate with the other people off-roading with you in your group. If you are hiking, you would use GMRS to communicate with your co-hikers. On the farm, you might use GMRS to communicate with other farm workers to ensure that your fertilizer use is within the strict limits set by the idiots in Washington, D.C. that don't care how much you pay for your groceries, or for staying in contact with your friends and colleagues while gathering at the U.S. Capitol for an unscheduled sightseeing tour. What GMRS is not primarily intended for is finding strangers to talk with or making contacts. This is the misconception about GMRS that has apparently ruined many lives.
And we're back, and we have got a special guest today. We've got Randy from NotARubicon. Thank you for joining us, Randy.
Nice to be here.
So I reached out to you because we published a video recently on GMRS radios, HTs to be specific. And, you know, I understand that Wouxun, or some other variation of that is the actual name. Take it away.
Wouxun. Ocean.
Okay.
Ocean. Wouxun.
So anyway, when we published this video, Randy, the goal was to say to our audience, look, if you don't want to study for a ham radio license and take the exam, that's okay. It's not that hard, but if you don't want to do it, that's cool. But these new GMRS radios, or newer GMRS radios, have really good power, really good range, and generally speaking, pretty good option for the average Joe. And that's exactly what we said, the average Joe. So, of course, that brought the keyboard commandos out of the woodwork to tell us how we were wrong, and anybody who was too lazy to go get their ham radio license was a dunce and blah, 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 blah. And that is why I reached out to you, because you are the authority on GMRS, and you're also probably the most skilled, adept person at dealing with the keyboard commandos I have ever seen on any channel. So kudos for that, by the way.
Thank you.
So I see a ton of radios behind you, and I know that you have a preference for GMRS technology. Absolutely. I'm jealous. I have one handset here. I mean, I'm very, I feel like I've been outdone here. You win.
I'll have to send you a sack full.
My wife will really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Probably not. So, Randy, let's just start with the basics. Why is GMRS a good choice for the average Joe?
Well, it depends on what you need your radio for, but it's simple, it's easy to use. It's basically GMRS's CB Radio 2.0. You don't really have to learn much to use it. You just get a GMRS radio and turn it on and pick a channel and make sure the person you want to talk to is on the same channel and you're up and running. Most GMRS radios have great range. They GMRS doesn't do everything that ham radio does. There's a lot that you can do in ham radio that you can't do in GMRS. But again, depending on why you need a radio, GMRS, in my opinion, which is all that matters to me, is a great choice for the average Joe for a lot of people.
So basically here was the premise behind it was, what do you do if the cell network goes down and you need to maintain communications, whether it be monitoring NOAA or speaking to family members, you know, those sort of things. And so our suggestion was, go get high quality GMRS radio. Sorry, did you want to throw something in there, Randy?
No, I'm listening.
Okay. So the suggestion on our part was, you can get decent quality GMRS radios. We like the Wouxun, Ocean ones, because in our testing, we got further than any other radio with the Wouxun, Oceans. I see I'm going to trump you now. You only say 2 versions of pronunciation. I've got 3 of them and they're messed up.
The correct accepted version is Wouxun, Ocean. Don't ask me how to pronounce the name for one of these.
Okay.
That's a whole other story.
That's
yes, the Wouxun UV5R.
The infamous.
Yes.
I usually refer to them as Baofeng, but what do I know?
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, not at all. I'm not a linguist like you are. You clearly have a much better handle on.
Very cunning linguist. Go ahead.
Yes, you do. God, I love your sense of humor. So back to the premise. So the premise was, from a prepping perspective, go get some of these decent GMRS radios. Doesn't take much to learn how to use them. As you mentioned, they're pre-programmed. You don't have to learn to massage CSV files. You come from a tech background, so you know as well as I do that if you have a return character that's not visible to the eye and you try to push it to a device with chirp, that the process will fail. And that's a little bit more than some people want to get into. They don't want to get into massaging spreadsheets, you know, comma separated value CSV files, and learning new software like chirp and learning offsets for receive, transmit. And I don't blame them. So we also mentioned the fact that the hardest part, in my opinion, of GMRS radios, if you're going to be legal, is navigating the FCC's website. It is atrocious.
It is a dumpster fire of a website. And a lot of people say that there is a test to get a GMRS license, and that test is making your way through that dumpster fire of a website. And it is, a lot of people have said that it is actually harder to figure that out than it is to get one of those silly ham license permission slips. A lot of people just don't even bother, but we don't want to make the FCCs sad or unhappy. Because as we all know, you should have a permission slip before you use your GMRS license. But that's another good thing about GMRS, is that if you have one of those little $9 bubble pack FRS radios, you can talk to all of those radios, and there's no license needed for those radios, which is another reason why I like GMRS so much, because it's compatible with those cheapo, non-license required radios. I lead off-roading events we'll have 100 or more people.
Wow.
Strung out through the desert, following a trail somewhere. And a lot of people that come to those events are, they're not radio dorks. They don't have GMRS radios. So I tell them just to stop at Walmart and get a $9 or $15 bubble pack FRS radio, and they can still talk and listen to us. It's just a little bit lower power and even easier to use. But again, that's just another advantage of GMRS, is that it talks to those simpler radios. You can't do that with ham radio.
That's a great point, Randy. And we didn't raise that in the video that we did, but I can tell you that I have a radio on my desk. My wife has one on her desk. We both work long hours, and sometimes we just need to communicate something by voice a little quicker than a text message. And where her office and desk is, the opposite end of our building here, she's constantly getting kids on FRS radios, coming up on her radio. So it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that. I'd never thought of that. That is a good value add, that people can get in on it for very low dollar, no license.
Right. Very simple to use. And what you were saying a minute ago, before I probably went off topic, about the when the grid goes down, for local communicating, something like GMRS is great because it'll give you, that's what part of my plan is. If there's a grid down, I don't need to get on a $1,000 ham radio and talk around the world. I need to talk to my wife down the street, go into the grocery store or whatever, and just have simple and easy communications. Again, GMRS does that just fine. In most cases, depending on your geography, it's not going to talk through mountains and things like that. But for around town or even further, it's a great choice.
You know, I'm a little jealous of your situation there, Randy. The repeater network in California is, to my knowledge, unparalleled in any other state. So you've got a ton of, you know, amateur enthusiasts who have repeaters available in California. We have repeaters here in the Southeast, but nowhere near. Like if I go to Repeater Book and look around me versus what's in California, it's a fraction.
Yeah, a lot of ham radio, and now more recently, a lot of GMRS repeaters as well. So I can now, and this is really just very recent, I can go off-roading. I live at the foot of a mountain range, and we always go off-roading on the other side of the mountain range.
Okay.
So I've got no communication on the other side of that mountain range. There's a few repeaters that have been at the kind of at the top, the ridges of those mountain range and can talk to both sides, but none of them have great range up in the desert in the areas where we go. Some guy just put a new repeater up that he put in just the right spot, and now I can talk from the desert 150 miles away to Orange County on the other side of the hills, 50 miles the opposite direction, 200 miles or 175 miles full distance from my Jeep in the middle of nowhere. I can talk to somebody at Disneyland, basically, or I can talk to my son or my wife who might still be at home if their radio was on. I can talk to them at home from almost everywhere where I go off-roading on that side of town.
That's phenomenal. So are you utilizing like a mobile radio, like a Wouxun Ocean 1000G, or are you talking an HT?
For a long time, I had the Wouxun Ocean KG1000G in both of my Jeeps. I have a Jeep. My wife has a Jeep.
Okay.
And we can get into this later if you want. As part of my planning, let's say, I wanted to have encrypted communications if I needed it. So
Okay.
I upgraded to some Motorola XTL 5000s. They're
Okay.
old police type radios. So I'm using those. But even with the
So let me just
Wouxun
write that down, Randy, because I want to put it in the description below. So the Motorola
XTL
Yep.
5000.
5000.
So that's what I have is the mobile radios, and that goes up to 110 watts. It's a police radio. It's called an LMR business type radio, but it
Okay.
can transmit on GMRS frequencies as well, even though that makes the FCCs very sad when you do that. And it can go all the way up to, I don't remember, 500 or so megahertz. So that's what I carry around in it's mounted in the Jeep. But this repeater, specific one that I'm talking about, it's called the Mesa Crest repeater for anybody in Southern California.
Okay.
I was up on a hill in the desert at a place called the Hammers, Johnson Valley. If you're an off-roader, you've heard of the King of the Hammers. I was on top of one of the trails there and using a handheld. I think it was it was either one of my Wouxun Ocean radios or one of my Motorola radios. With that handheld, I was able to hit that repeater, which meant I could still, from the middle of the desert at King of the Hammers, I could still talk to Disneyland at the other end of Southern California from an HT because of that repeater.
Phenomenal. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. We do not have the network of repeaters here to even remotely compete with that. Just for the benefit of our viewers, just want to go back to this. So is the Motorola XTL 5000 an older product that you can buy used on eBay sort of thing from police forces?
Yeah, I would never recommend eBay because it's a den of thieves and liars, but yes, you can find them there. I get them refurbished. There's a place called Kemp Wireless, KEMP Wireless in Oregon. But there's a lot of places that they'll buy them at auction. I think they stopped making the XTL, and the XTL is the mobile line, and they have a matching XTS, which is their handheld line. I think they stopped making them in 2015 or 2017, something like that. So they're not ancient, but they're not the height of technology. But they are, this is what many police forces carried around. This is the
Right.
XTS 5000. It's a weapon. I mean, they are good radios, but they're not GMRS radios. And I have these because of the encryption we'll talk about later.
Yeah, I really
if you'd
want to
like.
know more as far as the encryption is concerned, because I have just enough knowledge to be dangerous on that front. These are UHF radios, correct?
UHF LMR is how they're signified by the FCC. Land
Okay.
mobile radio business. It's a business radio.
Gotcha.
Is how it's classified.
So after we wrap up here, do you have an affiliate code for Kemp Wireless that we can share with our audience by chance?
Yeah, but I don't remember what it is. Just tell them NotARubicon sent you, and they'll know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Because
All right.
when you buy one of these from Kemp, refurbished, warranty, because it is used, they will actually talk to you and ask what it is you want and what you think you're going to do, because they're complicated radios, and a lot of people think they're getting one thing and they're getting another, something else. So they'll talk to you and make sure that you know what you're buying, and you can just mention the NotARubicon.
So I'll have to check my notes, but a good friend of ours, Keith Graves is his name. He runs a YouTube channel called Conservative Cops. He has another channel, Christian Warrior Training, where he provides free training to churches around the country. He was a 30-year SWAT team leader and trainer in the Bay Area, so Alameda County. And to this day, he provides training to all levels of law enforcement and intelligence. So he's constantly traveling the country. I'm pretty sure that the XTS 5000 is the unit that he deployed at his church. He's now in Idaho. It looks very familiar. Yeah. And he chose that radio because he said that they come with the encryption already on them if they've been used in a law enforcement environment. He said he's not recommending that you do this because technically it's against the rules, but that was one of the reasons. But his church has 4 campuses, and they're maybe a 25-mile circumference, if memory serves me right. And they put up one base station, with a tower, and they can hit all of them now just from those HTs, the XTS. Pretty sure it's the XTS 5000. I'll double check. I've been meaning to dive in further into that, by the way. But you've got many years of experience on me in this. I was always the typical guy where I bought a cheap radio and threw it in my bag and thought, okay, I'm good to go if the shit hits the fan. And then as I got a little bit more into it and got a little bit more knowledge and became a lot more dangerous, is when I came to the conclusion I like the GMRS because it's such an easy thing. But the worst thing you can do, I get these people on my channel and on my X all the time asking me questions and leaving comments saying that they'll buy something like the Wouxun UV5R for emergencies or for when shit hits the fan, and they throw it in their bag and they never read the manual. They don't know how to use it. And, I think a lot of them just think that when something goes sideways, they'll pick it up and press the 9 and the 1 and the 1 button and wait for help. Right. Because a radio without knowing how to use it is paperweight. Yeah, it's useless, right? Yeah. I mean, again, the way I've put it to people with GMRS is if you are capable of turning the device on, going to whatever channel, so up, down, or spinning the knob, and pushing the PTT button, push to talk button. It's called a trigger. That's the trigger. You can operate it. There you go. And then again, to be 100% legal or to have permission to use the airwaves, as you put it, once you navigate the FCC website, I think there's a $15 charge, one-time charge, and then $35 for your license. Good for 10 years, no exam, and covers your family. Correct. I don't think there's a $15 charge. No, it's a $35 fee for 10 years. It's been a while since I got mine, so that could be wrong. But yeah, I think it's just the 35. Covers your entire family. You all use the same call sign, should you decide to ever use the call sign. But if you don't, it makes the FCCs very sad. Another advantage over ham is that it does cover the whole family. So my recollection is that they charge this $15 processing fee, and then they hit you for the 35 on the GMRS license, good for 10 years. But I think the $15 is a one-time deal. I could be wrong. And I'm sure the people down below
Leave a comment. Leave a comment
yeah,
below and let us know.
correct us below down in the comment section. But that brings up an interesting point as far as GMRS is concerned. I'm trying to remember, you made a comment at one point in time on one of your videos, and of course, I've now lost my thought process. I don't have Alzheimer's, Randy. I have a sometimes. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I forget. And I've been furiously making notes down here, but I have lost my train of thought. I just turned 55 on Monday, so I'm now an AARP member and I'm a senior citizen. So you have to forgive me, for not having the memory that I had just last week when I was 54. So what else is there in the GMRS world that you feel it makes it an easier lift for the average person? Is there anything else that we're missing here?
I don't think you can get much easier than take it out of the box and turn it on and pick a channel and push the trigger to start talking. It doesn't get any easier. You don't have to learn anything. You don't have to know anything. What else could you ask for?
I got my memory came back.
It just hit you. Yeah. What?
I saw one point in time you mentioned on one of your videos, probably multiple videos, that the vernacular on GMRS is just talk the way you would normally talk, unlike ham, where
oh geez, if you don't talk right on a ham radio, you're never going to hear the end of it. Yeah, there is no etiquette on GMRS.
okay,
the FCC doesn't want you using profanity and stuff like that, but you don't have to learn any stupid 73s codes or QSLs or QTOs or any of that other stuff. You just talk. The radio is for talking. It's not for making contacts and chatting with anonymous men. It's for talking to whoever you need to talk to and talking. So yeah, there's no special bro codes and secret decoder ring stuff. You just use it like a normal person would talk.
I wonder if that's something that tweaks the purists in the ham radio community, that it's not as,
Yeah, some people seem to gravitate toward the radio world. Not all of them in the radio world are this way. But yeah, if they really crave structure and not breaking the rules and following every single mother effing rule, or they're just going to lose they go full R word, which I love, because I will oftentimes stray away from the structure that they're so used to in my videos. And I love it when they leave comments and start trying to spread their gospel and tell me how it should be. And I will often in the comments let them know that they're an idiot, which they really hate, because their whole world revolves around how smart they think they are because they passed a test and memorized a bunch of test questions, and now they're smarter than all of us.
I had the tremendous pleasure a little over 20 years ago to have lunch in California, of all places, with Lou Holtz, the winningest NCAA football coach in history. And he's been on the speaking circuit for many, many years. He's an incredibly insightful, intelligent, inspirational guy. And I had lunch with him, and he was supposed to stay for an hour and a half. He stayed for 4 hours. There were 12 of us at the table. We walked away shell-shocked at all the insight he laid on us. But he said one thing that is very germane to what you're describing in the comment section. He said there's two types of people in this world. There's those people who elevate themselves by elevating everybody around them, and those people elevate themselves by putting other people down. The good news is you have a choice of which bucket you want to be in. And from, an athletic perspective, I competed for many, many years on our national powerlifting team at a world-class level, set world records, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of people in athletics that elevate themselves by accusing other people of doing certain things to make themselves look bigger. It was one of those things, how you meet people in life and somebody says something that just sticks with you. That always stuck with me from Lou Holtz, because it gives me context to think what an insecure person to jump into the comment section of a YouTube video to puff their chest out and say, look at me, how great I am, over something that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So I I do bow to you, Randy. I got to admit, our audience knows I'm a tech guy. I've spent my entire life in high tech in some capacity. I have never seen anybody dispose of trolls like you do. You are the Jedi master of handling trolls, and my hat is truly off to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. And they hate it.
So if you have extra time on your hands and you're looking for something to do, you're more than welcome to come police the comments on Survival Dispatch. Be happy to have you do that. We'll give you a badge.
Yeah, I'm sure I could set a few of those guys straight.
Hey, we'll give you a badge. We'll give you a nice star and everything,
Oh, yeah.
Sheriff Randy.
Right.
Kind of got a ring to it. So let's come back to this encryption thing. So one of our guys, Mike Sterling, is a counterterrorism expert. He knows way more on radios than I do. And we got into a offline discussion around frequency hopping and how the Harris radios, the military radios, upwards of $20,000 can hop up to 100 channels inside of 1 second. And if memory serves me right, for radios that are sold to the public, they can frequency hop, but only up to 6 channels. We do have a really cool review coming up on these radios called Milo, Milo, and they're a little disc. And Mike took them to Wyoming. He was doing a job on an oil field that used to be a munitions practice area. So now there's all these unexploded ordnances from World War II, and Mike is a master EOD tech. So we sent him there with these Milos. He had 4 of them. They're FRS, obviously. And ironically enough, these little FRS radios frequency hop. And I think, again, the limitation is 6 channels per second. So my understanding was from Mike is that frequency hopping at 6 channels per second is more than enough to protect your communications from the average Joe. And you'd have to be, kind of like NSA level to be able to track and follow that stuff. And so here's my point. So those were small FRS radios. I swear they're like this big around, maybe that thick. So they don't have a lot of power. I don't remember the exact specs, but I'm guessing they're probably like a 0.5 watt transceiver. So as far as encryption's concerned, let's go back to the Motorola's and the XTS 5000, XTL 5000. So Keith, when he set up security, when he moved from California to outside of Boise, Idaho, and started putting protocols in place for security purposes because of, this increase in active killer situations. I'm pretty sure that he said that when you buy these radios, refurbished radios, that they already have the encryption on them. Technically, you're not supposed to use the encryption, and he wasn't counseling people to do that per se. But all of his church security teams now use those. And like I said, he's got 1 tower up so they can all bounce off it, speak to a 25-mile range in a urban, suburban type area. When we were talking offline, you brought up the topic of encryption, and I would like to hear your thoughts on that. So let's just, to be perfectly clear, you have to buy one of these used law enforcement radios or not to get the encryption.
Well, I don't think you have to buy them used. I think you can buy a brand new one. They're not restricted in any way that I'm aware of. They do come, there's 2 levels of encryption. There's the Motorola proprietary, which is, I believe, called ADP encryption. And as far as I'm aware, that's on all of at least the XTL and XTS models. I think it's also on the newer models, but I can't afford one of those, so I can't say for sure.
Okay.
The second level of encryption is AES 256 encryption.
Okay. Yep.
Which comes on their military type ones that Motorola makes. And you can upgrade these as well. So for example, this particular one has ADP only on it, the lower level of encryption. And I'm not aware of anything that says you are not allowed to use the encryption on these radios. You're not allowed to transmit any digital data over GMRS, whether it's encrypted or just anything more than a few seconds of a location. So digital, these are digital. They're analog and digital, but the encryption is all digital. So to encrypt, it has to be digital, and you can't do that on GMRS. But if you have a business license, permission slip from the FCC's, I'm not aware of anything that says you cannot do encryption. The low-level ADP encryption is very easy to set up and very easy to use. You basically just turn it on and come up with a key and share that key between the radios that you want to be able to talk with. The AES 256 is much more complicated. You have to get a key loader. There's much more to it. Now, a lot of the experts will love to say and complain online that the ADP encryption can be cracked. It's crackable. And I think at some level, the AES 256 is as well. But the point that you brought up about the frequency hopping is that even though it's crackable encryption, it's plenty good enough for when there's an earthquake here around town and I need to go out foraging for toilet paper and my wife stays home and there's no grid, we can talk. And I don't think anybody's going to care enough to, one, realize what we're doing and try to figure out how to crack it. It's not easy to crack even the simple encryption. The AES 256 is much more difficult, but again, who is going to be listening and who's going to care, and then who's going to have the skills to be able to do it? It's very different. It's not like cracking a encrypted file on your computer. Cracking something over the air is a little bit more complicated. So it's the simple encryption that comes with the radios is, in my opinion, it's plenty good enough for me, and probably plenty good enough for anybody else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. AES 256 has been around for quite a while. It's very robust, and it takes a lot of compute cycles to, hack it and decrypt it. So
yeah. Your average guy, your average toilet paper hunter is not going to have the skills to crack either. If part of your plan, part of my plan is not to be transmitting on GMRS frequency. We have frequencies. We have other frequencies that we use that the average guy isn't listening to, although they could still pick them out of the air and find them. It's just, who's targeting you, and nobody's targeting me when I'm going out foraging for toilet paper in an emergency.
Gotcha. What's, just out of curiosity, what's the wattage like on those guys, the XTS and XTL?
5 or 6 watts. They're not high powered radios. They're standard. And part of that is because you want the battery to last a long time, and they've got a huge battery, so they last for days. But it's not about the power. It's about the antenna.
I was going to say the antenna is
how
probably,
you use it.
Yeah, the antenna is probably well tuned then for the band.
Yeah.
That it's
for the band. And I got one that's a little more specific to the frequencies that I use. But just out of the box, it's plenty good enough for the entire band range from below GMRS up to a little bit higher. Works fine out of the box.
So personally, I really like the simplicity of GMRS. I've got a handful of different GMRS handsets. We have some that we keep in Faraday bags. So you noted offline that there's been a lot of solar flares or CMEs this year, coronal mass ejections. We're at the height of the 11-year solar cycle right now, and it's supposed to intensify as we get into the spring. So whether it's an EMP or a CME, it's, from my perspective as a prepper, for what it costs for radios, we keep a few of them charged up and in Faraday bags. And, God forbid that we have an EMP that's caused by nuclear war or something, but we have our radios protected. But I'm also, a tech whore, for lack of a better term. I love technology. I love playing with technology, new technology, and acquiring it. And again, I have some notes from Keith Graves on these Motorolas. Now you've really got my attention. I'm going to go check them out at Kemp Wireless. Ballparkish, what would they cost refurbished versus new?
They're not cheap. I can't afford a new one.
Okay.
The long-standing joke is that the model number, so this is the XTS 5000, that 5000 is the starting suggested price. I believe these were in the $5,000 range when they were new.
Wow.
Yeah, they're not cheap. And you get them fully refurbished, I think for around $800 in that neighborhood. Okay. You can go on eBay and find somebody that you've never talked to before and have no idea what they're selling you and get them for a couple of $100. But they are not cheap. But in a lot of ways, well, you're getting what you're paying for, as long as you don't get ripped off on eBay.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back with Keith and ask him the encryption piece, and I'm sure somebody will correct us down below in the comment section as well. What is required to get a business license, Randy?
It's funny you ask that, because for a long time, I've been operating under a business license, but it wasn't my license. It was another entity's business license. And I
Okay.
just, a week ago, finally got my business license. And to get the license is, if you thought getting a GMRS license was difficult, wait till you see the 40-page application for a business license.
No
So
kidding.
what I did is I paid my friends at Kemp Wireless, who have a service. That's why it's funny you bring this up. They did it all for me.
Wow.
And there's because getting a business license is so complicated. There are services where you pay them. It's a couple $100, and they do it all for you, and you just pay them whatever their fee is to do that paperwork for you.
Okay.
That's the couple $100. The
Yeah.
paperwork to the FCC itself was not very much. I don't remember off the top of my hand, but I have I think it's 10-year business license. I'm allowed to transmit on several frequencies, not GMRS frequencies. These are my frequencies
Right.
that are presumably they're shared. I don't own them, but nobody within quite a range around me should be using them licensed. So it's very quiet frequencies, and I can do encryption. I can do high power. I think up to 100 watts with with FCC's blessings. So basically what I did was I called Kemp and said I want a business license, and they got some information from me, and a couple of weeks later I had it in the mail.
Yeah, I'm writing down questions here that I'm going to ask Keith Graves. I wonder if he was referring to the encryption that it's not allowed unless you have a business license. Maybe I misinterpreted what he was saying there. Just a thought. Maybe if you're unlicensed, you shouldn't be using encryption. Was there not a kerfuffle over some of the Baofeng radios having
Boofwang.
Boofwang? I have this vague recollection that years ago there was something around the fact that they had encryption that was not kosher or something, or not
No, I think
not right with FCC.
I think what you're thinking about is to sell a radio in the United States. Boofwang is the UV5R is a ham radio. They now make a GMRS version, but for up until just recently, it's ham radio only. You had to meet certain specifications from our overlords at the FCCs, and the Boofwang did not meet all of those specifications. They had too many spurious RF emissions and probably some other stuff that nobody really cares about other than some people. And so the FCC sent a letter to the Boofwang man in China, and they, for a short time, outlawed them from import. Said you couldn't import them and couldn't sell them because they weren't meeting these requirements. I don't even remember what the requirements are.
Okay.
Part of it was that it wasn't locking out. It's one of the reasons so many people, especially preppers, like the Boofwang UV5R, is because you can transmit on any frequency pretty much. And for example, you can transmit on the ham frequencies, MERS, GMRS, business frequencies. You're not supposed to be allowed to do that. That's what an unlocked radio is. And because it wasn't locked, because you could transmit on the GMRS frequencies, they didn't like that and you couldn't sell them. So Boofwang then started locking the radios to meet those requirements, and then they're legal again. It was I remember seeing a lot of people saying that they're illegal to own and you can't transmit them on them. You can own whatever you want. That's not the case. It was just they were barred from sales for a short time.
Okay.
But it is still against the rules to transmit on GMRS frequencies or anything out of the ham frequencies on a unlocked radio. Makes the FCCs very sad.
Sad hams.
Sad FCCs. And more sad hams. Yeah. I don't know why. Sorry. I do not understand why, if I make a video about GMRS and that I can talk on GMRS with my illegal Boofwang, why some sad ham has to come onto my video about GMRS radios and preach to me that I'm breaking the FCC rules on GMRS, their ham radio world has nothing to do with my GMRS world. And yet they still feel compelled to come and show their FCC YouTube division badge and tell me I'm going to go to jail, which is also a whole nother story.
So we're back to the two types of people in this world. That's how they elevate themselves, by putting you down. Yeah. All too familiar with that. So on the topic of GMRS, is there a current handset or HT that is, far and away the best, like you think is just like the top of the line, or are they all pretty similar? What would you
People
recommend?
ask me, the most common question I get is what radio is the best? And my answer is always that I can't answer that because it depends on what best means to you.
Okay.
For some people, the best means the cheapest. So in that case, one of the cheap little CCR, cheap Chinese radios, is the best.
Okay.
Some people want the most features. So in that case, you want a lot of features. The Wouxun ocean radios usually have a lot of features. You want best quality. The Wouxun ocean radios are super heterodyne. Some of them are, and are better quality. What a lot of people mean when they say the best is which one can talk the most FARs, and they all pretty much talk the same number of FARs. So there is no one radio or one manufacturer that's going to let you transmit further than any of the others that I've ever seen.
Good explanation. I've heard other people say as well that it really boils down to the antenna and the geography that you're in, as far as
I think I just said
side.
That. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is the case.
That's what I'm saying. I've heard it before, and you're repeating it. But I get a question for you, for our audience. I explained it, but I don't know that if I did a good job of explaining it. So this is the Wouxun Ocean. I always forget the KQ.
CoQ10.
So again,
I have mine right behind me.
I'm 55 now, so I have I'm challenged KG-Q10G, and yeah, same thing. So you mentioned super heterodyne chip, and I know that it's better than SoC, but give us the simple explanation for our audience why they want a super heterodyne receiver.
Super heterodyne is going to be more sensitive. So first, let's back up. Most people won't notice the difference. For most people, It doesn't matter. But the super heterodyne receiver is going to be more sensitive, so you can pick up stuff maybe that an SoC radio may not be able to pick up in real extreme low signal situations. Usually the squelch works better on a super het radio. The one thing that has affected me the most in using the two different types of radios is that they filter noise out better, noise being static or bleed over from other channels. They do that, at least the radios that I've used and compared. The super het radios just don't hear a lot of the static and bleed over on a channel that a SoC radio would hear, and you'd hear that as just static or interference. So those are some of the differences. But I think for a lot of people, there, for all intensive purposes, is no difference.
Okay. All right. So really just the sound quality may be better under some circumstances.
Yeah. They're better radios. They're better made. That's why they cost more. But the differences are not huge. The biggest difference for me was that bleed over, that filtering issue. When we go off-roading, there's a couple areas that we would drive through that had some kind, I think we were driving through the between two microwave television stations or something. One was up on a mountain and the receiver was somewhere here. And whenever we would go through certain areas, the radios were unusable if they were the SoC cheap radios.
Interesting.
We would literally have to turn off our radios through this 5-mile stretch because it was just static and noise and buzzing and really weird noise. We don't hear that on the super het radios. Yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, there's, as you know, you come from a high-tech background as well. There's a handful of national wireless ISPs that specialize in last mile servicing remote areas. And a lot of times those are microwave, point-to-point microwave. I've used it before. I've had it before. It was actually fairly respectable performance when you're in the middle of nowhere. But I didn't realize that that would interfere with radios. That's good to know.
They can.
Yeah, I've been super impressed with the Wouxun Ocean KQ10G. Just the sound quality is noticeably better for me. It's crisper and clearer, and as I mentioned before, hard to figure out what the causes were. But I've got farther with that radio than any other HT in our area here, with large homes.
Sorry, that's also the only or one of the only that can receive CB radio as well, right? Is that the one? Am I thinking of the right one?
That's right.
Yeah,
it can't transmit, but it can receive.
Right. And I don't think there's any other GMRS radios that can receive CB radio. So that's, the more you can receive, the better, especially in an emergency. So that is a good little radio.
It is. And it also has GPS built into it as well.
Yes. Yep.
So you can send your location to somebody else, which is pretty slick if you're in an SHTF situation or you've been injured. I don't know. Are you familiar with the Garmin InReach Minis?
I've got one in my Jeep.
Yeah. So, I mean,
but I'll tell you, my wife wants a new phone, so we're going to be getting her a new iPhone, which I think is going to put those minis out of business because it does the same, supposedly, I haven't used it yet, emergency satellite signaling and calling and data. So I'm actually going to be making a video about that as soon as I get the phone. But in the meantime, that mini is great. It can be a lifesaver.
It started with the iPhone 14 Pro Max or Pro, which I had, and I've got the iPhone 15 Pro Max here. And if I lose all cell network coverage, it flips to a satellite up here. But my understanding is that it's strictly for emergency purposes, whereas the Garmin InReach Mini 2, you can tether it to your phone, use the Garmin app, and send and receive text messages over the satellite network.
Yep. That's true, which I do as well. We keep in touch at home when we're off, again, in the middle of nowhere where there's no cell phone coverage for miles, no repeater coverage, no nothing. I can still send and receive texts through that mini.
Yeah, I like the way that you can have it send breadcrumbs to a family member, so they know where you've been, where you're going.
They see exactly where you're at.
Yeah. I've used it to pull down maps too when we got way off the grid on some tributaries in the middle of nowhere in Central Florida, no cell phone service, and trying to get a handle on precisely where we were. And I was able, like I said, to pull the maps down through the InReach Mini 2 to my smartphone, and we got a handle on our exact location. I mean, we're kind of a little bit off topic from GMRS, but whoever the CEO was of Garmin, who took them from being a GPS company to what they are now, absolutely brilliant individual. I mean, they could have gone the way of Kodak and been, just a distant memory, but they didn't. They make some amazing products. This is a Garmin Tactics watch, and so it's got solar built into it. I charge it once a month at the most. And I met a guy last week who's got the newest version of this. This is last year's. He's got the new one. They took the solar off the new one because it doesn't need the solar and it still lasts 30 plus days, the new AMO LEDs. So this is connected to all my stuff. I'm very fond of Garmin, and I'm a gun guy. So this also connects to the apps for all my dope sheets on my long distance guns. So I can retrieve information from my watch as far as what the bullet drop is at a certain distance based on its grainage and everything. So it's geeky gun guy stuff. But, again, I'll say it for the umpteenth time. I love technology and I love gadgets, and I know you do too. So have we missed anything as far as GMRS is concerned, Randy? I mean, it's easy peasy. You turn it on, you pick the channel, you push to talk, keep it charged up, keep it in a Faraday bag. What else am I potentially missing here?
There's probably a lot that I'm not thinking of, but again, it's easy, and that's the whole point. I think the one thing that I like to be clear about is that it is not ham, meaning that with ham you can do a lot more. if you need to do a lot more, but I don't need to do a lot more. Most people don't, or a lot of people don't. It does not do, GMRS does not do that long range HF around the world transmission or receiving that like you can do in ham. It's easy. That's the whole point. You don't have to learn a bunch of stuff. You don't have to memorize a test. You just pick it up, take it out of the bag, and start using it.
So I have a question for you then, and I know this varies based on geography, but if someone bought the Wouxun Ocean 1000G, which is the mobile one that can go in your Jeep, your truck, or you can bring it in the house. I've got a power supply they sent me for it. It's a pretty slick little box with a tuned antenna on the average rooftop. How far away would that typically communicate to an HT? Let's say that there's average obstructions, or do you really need one in your truck or Jeep plus one in your home to get any appreciable, coverage or mileage?
With my, I've got a big antenna on the roof. I run a repeater as well, so the repeater uses that antenna, but I can switch it to a regular radio. And where I am, because I'm up atop a golden hillside overlooking the slums below, I have very good line of sight for miles. And unfortunately, though, 30 miles or 35 miles away in almost every direction are mountains. So I can't get past those mountains, but I can cover that entire 35 and 40 miles in almost all directions, sometimes with just a handheld, but really well using the antenna on the roof. And there have been times where I'll find somebody that's on the other side of through a crack in the mountains where there is line of sight for 60, 65 miles. And I can talk to them just radio to radio, not on a handset, but from their mobile in their car to my antenna on the roof. With a handheld, I can get 35 miles straight across to the hills, 35 miles across from me, because there's nothing between us.
Gotcha.
I forgot what your question was, but I guess
no, I was just asking,
yeah.
like the mobile, the 1000G from Wouxun Ocean, which is 50 watts, which is the maximum for GMRS. What kind of range like a person could expect? So if I'm hearing you correctly, or at least interpreting you correctly, to get the best performance, you would want to have one at home base and one in your vehicle as opposed to an HT.
One in your vehicle with a nice antenna on the roof of the vehicle is going to perform a lot better than an HT. Plus that extra power of something like a Wouxun Ocean KG 1000G, that extra power, the difference between 5 watts and 50 watts is significant. And that will help you get through a lot of obstructions in houses and buildings and stuff. So short answer is a radio mounted in your vehicle with a nice, well-tuned antenna on the roof will always outperform a handheld sitting inside the Faraday cage of your car.
So you mentioned that you had a repeater config as well. Is that in your Jeep or your home or both?
No, the repeater is in the home attached to the big antenna on the roof.
Okay. It's
open to everybody here in the Inland Empire. Used to be on the internet as well.
Okay.
But I just took that down. We had some hardware issues, so I just pulled the plug on that project.
So the Wouxun Ocean 1000G, correct me if I'm wrong, you need 2 of them to create a repeater config, one to receive, one to transmit. What do you have for your repeater, just out of curiosity?
I initially built a repeater using the 2 KG 1000Gs, which was a fun project. It's not when you do that, you make your repeater that way. It is not the best performing repeater. It's really great for if you're out in the woods with a friend and you both have KG 1000Gs and you need to rig something up on the go, you can do that.
Okay.
But I had that at the house for, 6 months or a year. And then I replaced it with a commercial quality UHF repeater, which functions in GMRS. So it's a GMRS repeater, but it's basically a higher end commercial type repeater. It's called a VXR 7000.
Say that again?
Vertex VXR 7000. It's another one of those ones that aren't made anymore. They stopped making them a couple of years ago, so you can pick them up used for a couple $100.
No kidding.
Yeah, and that far outperforms stringing 2 radios together. It's bulletproof, runs all day. You can talk on it 24/7 and have people transmitting on it all day, all night. Whereas something like the Retevis RT97, which is the small portable repeater.
I've seen them.
I love that. That is great. Or if you're talking with your buddies, but it's not great if you have a radio club and people are going to be talking on it 24/7. The Vertex is built for 24/7 hammering.
Was correct me if I'm wrong, the Retevis 25 watts, less wattage than what
it's sold as 10 watts, so it outputs 10 watts, but because it goes like all repeaters, it uses a device called a duplexer that lets it transmit and listen at the same time. That type of small duplexer always sucks out about 40 or 50% of the power. Any duplexer does that, of that type. So you're only getting 3 or 4 or 5 watts out of the Retevis. Okay. I've range tested them a couple of times. I've made some videos about that. Perfect for where I live. It can still go 20, 30 miles with the antenna on the roof or further. We took it up in the desert and with a battery and left it up on top of a hill and drove all around the countryside. And one guy went in one direction and I went the other direction, still worked fine. So those Retevis portables, I really like those. Those are great little radios. Midland makes basically the same thing. I forget the model number of it, but it's the only repeater they make. Very similar. Does pretty much the same thing and costs a little bit more, but not all of the money goes to China when you buy it from Midland. Gotcha. Only some of it.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Randy. I've got, like I said, I've got the one Wouxun 1000G, and we're putting together our own SHTF plan. So we've got all kinds of radios, but I'm pretty fond of eating our own dog food, and we recommended GMRS because it's easy and the performance is respectable and it would meet all of our needs. But now we're looking at changing out things like what radio's in the truck, what's the base station at home. Actually, can you see over my shoulder here? See that line right there? That is a GMRS tuned antenna that's going to go on top of our fireplace, on top of our chimney. So I love the guys at buy2aradios.com. I know that you've worked with them as well. I don't have your level of technical understanding on all the radio stuff. So when I pick up the phone and I call buy2aradios.com, I get somebody right here in the Carolinas that speaks perfect English and knows their shit. And
it's always a plus when you can pick up the phone and call for support and they actually speak the same language.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's one of actually my biggest complaints with power stations. So grid down is super top of mind for everybody in the survival prepping community these days. We're essentially a first world country with a third world power grid. And good luck if you have a warranty issue on a power station that you bought from somebody that is based out of China, unless they're one of the biggest names in the business. You got a handful of names that are at the top, and yes, they honor their warranty and they answer the phone and emails. But once you drop down to that second tier and below for power stations, one, the overall quality is not there, and two, the support is just terrible.
It's the same with the radios.
Yeah, we get sent a lot of power stations, and if we have any type of issue and they don't respond, we don't put it on the channel, because that's kind of a shitty situation to be caught, and you spent a significant amount of money on a nice power station and it breaks and you can't even get them to answer your email. That's probably not the best choice.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, I got to tell you, I really, really enjoyed discussing this, and I've got pages of notes here. If you saw my desk, I've been putting a piece of paper over here. And I can't thank you enough for, sharing your knowledge with us here, as well as on your own channel. As I mentioned offline, I watch your videos and listen to them frequently. Love your sense of humor. I wish I had your chops when it comes to dealing with the internet keyboard commandos. Maybe someday, Jedi Master could take me under your wing and teach me the ways of the GMRS Jedi. Is there anything else that I'm forgetting before we wrap up, Randy?
Yeah, probably, but I'm for getting it also. So it was fun. And thanks for having me. And I enjoyed being here.
Yeah, I'm sure that I'll reach out to you again at some point in the future. As you know, the great thing with technology is that the only thing that stays the same is that nothing stays the same. So I highly anticipate there will be another point, probably in the not too distant future, when something really cool will come out, and we'll see it on your channel first, NotARubicon. You know what? Let's wrap up on that. Share with our audience why your channel is called NotARubicon.
Okay. So yeah, it's another big question because it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Back in the old days, when I first started my channel, I made off-roading videos. And I made off-roading videos because I have a Jeep. And I have a Jeep because I'm a cool guy and I like to go off-roading. When you buy a Jeep, the top trim of the Jeeps, of the Wrangler, is called a Rubicon. And my Jeep, and then they have these, the lower level trims for us poors. My Jeep is not a Rubicon because it's not a Rubicon. It's better. I made it better over time and a lot of money. So when you see the Jeeps driving around, you see with the big stickers on the hood, it says Rubicon. Well,
Yes.
mine says not a Rubicon. So because I was making off-road videos, my Jeep was named Not a Rubicon. I named the channel Not a Rubicon. It ends up that nobody likes my off-roading videos, so I started making videos about the radios that I used while I was off-roading, which were GMRS radios. And I didn't want to make a new channel, so I just kept it on the my formerly off-roading channel called Not a Rubicon. Not a Rubicon Productions actually is the full name.
I've seen that. Yeah. So, well, your reputation precedes you when it comes to GMRS, which is probably why you attract a lot more flack from the sad hams than I do. And actually, let's just speak to that ever so briefly. What is a sad ham? I know. I just wanted to share it with our audience.
All right, the sad ham. We all know the sad ham. They're very rare in real life. They tend not to come outdoors very often. They like to congregate in their basement. Those are the guys that you generally see online that know everything, like you said, to make themselves look better. They step on everybody else to try to put everybody else down. They oftentimes are very strict rule followers. They have hard times picking up on social cues from other human beings. They are basically ham radio operators that are also assholes. Not to be confused with the vast majority of ham radio operators that are what we call happy hams or just normal hams that are helpful and kind and just normal people. The sad hams are not those guys. These are the jerks. And the funny thing is that when I'm making fun of these sad hams, a sad ham thinks that I'm talking about or making fun of all ham radio operators. A happy ham understands that no, I'm not talking about everybody. I'm talking about just those idiots and jerks that happen to be also ham radio operators. So it's the guy that you don't want to run into online because he just sucks all the fun out of the room.
So I don't have a lot of experience with sad hams. We did obviously get a bunch of them out in our last video we did on GMRS, but we do have fairly frequent where somebody chooses to chastise us because they couldn't differentiate between something facetious and something serious.
They have a hard time grasping sarcasm and humor. Yeah, that's no sense of humor is a telltale sign of a sad ham.
How dare you say this? And then there's like many paragraphs of a rant cutting us to shreds. And our response was, that was sarcasm. You didn't catch that?
It was a joke.
You know?
Yeah, yeah, they don't. Because the jokes, the sarcasm, they don't grasp it.
And the worst part is it was clearly a joke. I think probably one of the best things that we have going for our channel is we've got some pretty humorous personalities and we like to throw in some zingers. We're not on your level yet, Randy, but we're trying real hard. But all right, listen, Randy, I'll let you go. We've consumed enough of your time. Can't thank you enough. Please stay in touch. Really love your content. Love you sharing information. And go check out NotARubicon on YouTube and NotARubicon on X, formerly known as Twitter. Perfect.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Randy.